Steelers beat reporter Nick Farabaugh. I'm John Luciew, and it's starting. The new league year is fast approaching, and the first major event that will set the stage for the draft in Pittsburgh is going to be convening starting next week in Indianapolis. And Nick, you're about to be a busy man. He's got a full agenda, keeping up with Omar Khan and company, and all of those prospects who are eyeing to be on that stage in Pittsburgh. So we are wide open and live on YouTube for comments as you pick Nick's brain of all of these prospects that he studied, how the Steelers will use 12 picks. Will they trade up from that 21 spot to make a real splash on the home in front of the partisan Pittsburgh crowd? We've got lots to talk about, Nick, with. But the one thing that really strikes for me is, okay, this is going to be the first evaluation process without Mike Tomlin, and he was always center stage with a lot of these prospects and a lot of these venues. So what is Mike McCarthy's role now stepping in as head coach, and how does that change the process? And has that evaluation process and discussion, among the top players for the Steelers, has that been delayed because of all this transition from Tomlin to McCarthy?
Well, sure, you don't have as much time as you would in a normal offseason with Mike as the head coach, but I do think McCarthy has done catch up. Listen, they fit this all in, and the front office has been doing what they've been doing the whole time too, right? Omar Khan has been involved in the head coaching search, but Andy Weidel, the scouts, the rest of the guys underneath Omar have been doing draft prep, have been looking at the free agency pool. They've been having these talks. So I do think having the stability of GM is going to help the Steelers, right? Having Omar Khan there, having Andy Weidel there, having that nucleus there, it's going to give them a good starting point. For McCarthy, I don't think he's going to be as big of a focus as Tomlin was in the weeds of it all. Mike Tomlin loved the draft process. He loved talking with prospects. He loved getting to know them, pick their brain. From what I've talked to around people in the league, that's not Mike McCarthy. That's not really his thing. He likes being in a building. He likes calling plays on the sideline. I don't think the evaluation draft part of things gets him going like it got Mike Tomlin going. You know what I mean? Mike Tomlin was a draft junkie. I don't think Mike McCarthy's that. Doesn't mean Mike McCarthy's not going to have a say. He's going to have a big say. He's going to watch guys, obviously. He's going to see a fit for certain players in his offense. He's going to look at different free agents, the Steelers free agents. That was the first thing he did when he was hired. He evaluated the personnel the Steelers had. So playing catch up to the draft guys, certainly he had to do that. Also, though, I think he had a lot of exposure to different players just from kind of sitting down on the sidelines this year. Like, he didn't coach. So naturally, you watch more football. You do a bunch of different things like that. So there's a lot of work that Mike McCarthy also put in to that draft process in anticipation he would be hired. So, yeah, it's going to be a little different than Mike Tomlin. I don't think, this guy's going to be as involved as Mike Tomlin was in terms of just going everywhere, talking to everybody, being visible as you can be. I don't think Mike McCarthy's going to be like that. He'll still have his say. He'll still watch prospects. He'll still dive in to the tape and all of that. But that's going to be one of the big differences. But I don't think it's going to be crazy. They're not going to have to play so much catch up. There's teams every single offseason that change GMs and head coaches, and they come out just fine. So the Steelers should be fine because they already have one of those operations fully going. So I don't think it's going to be a huge issue.
I know, covering the McCarthy transition through your schedule off a little bit, you like to get boned up on all of these prospects that are going to be at the combine and in the draft. And I've been watching some of your social media and your posts on PennLive, and you're starting to really dig into it. In Pittsburgh, Omar Khan has left us with a wide receiver deficient team the past 2 seasons. I know you see 3 almost surefire elite wide receivers at the top of this draft. I guess the question is, how far at the top And to make a splash in their hometown, do you foresee the Steelers spending some of those 12 picks to move up to get one of those 3 elite guys? Talk about the wide receiver field, especially at the top of this draft, and what those guys could do for this Steelers offense.
Well, this is an elite wide receiver group at the top. I talked about Mekhi Lemon, Jordan Tyson, and Carnell Tate. And those guys are, in my opinion, top 15 prospects legitimately. Are they a Jamar Chase level prospect? I don't know about that. That's probably one of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen in recent years. But I do think you think about Mekhi Lemon, who, in my opinion, is the best wide receiver in this draft. He's a guy that played a lot in the slot, but I think can play outside. He showcased a lot of good traits that can defeat press. We're talking about a guy that can really win inside and out, has great route running skills. He's physical. He's not 6'4". He's not DK Metcalf. He's not going to be this hulking frame. But you don't necessarily always need the hulking frame if you could separate. The Steelers don't have a separator. Also, Lemon shows a real good ability to go up above the rim and win while high pointing the ball. Jordan Tyson fits into Mike McCarthy's scheme like a glove, I think. I think he is the guy that is also likely to fall down the board. He has medical questions about some repeated lower leg and ankle issues. The Steelers, as I've mentioned multiple times, people have just shown an ability and really – they haven't cared much about medicals, to say the least, with Omar Khan and Andy Weidel. They've drafted a bunch of guys, Fautanu, Harmon, I can think of Washington, Wilson, Trice. You can just list them. There's so many guys that had medical questions that the Steelers were like, we'll take them. Tyson, also elite route runner. I think in terms of intermediate route running, we're talking about slants, digs, skinny posts, things like that are all in the West Coast offense. I think he's the best pure route runner of those guys. He's also played inside and out. He is the guy that probably directly kind of curtails the most in the Mike McCarthy scheme. I think you look at CeeDee Lamb, which is the guy that Mike McCarthy drafted the first year he was with Dallas, the 12th overall pick, they took CeeDee Lamb. And I think Tyson fits into that mold more than any of those guys. Carnell Tate might be the first one off the board. He has great acceleration. It's easy for him. There's not a lot of holes in his game. He's got so many incredible details in his game. He is a really high floor player, and I think also a guy that can be a very high ceiling player. So all 3 of these guys, extremely good players. This wide receiver group also, I think the cool thing is if the Steelers didn't get one of those 3, which, listen, if they're going to get one of those 3, they're probably going to have to trade up for one of those guys. And that's going to be a consideration they'll have to make. But if they didn't, if you can go up and get a Jordan Tyson, you do it. But if you don't, you got guys like Denzel Boston, Casey Concepcion, and Omar Cooper. There's a second tier there where late first, early second, there's a pretty healthy tier of guys there, which the wide receiver position this year in this draft is extremely good at the top, but it's also extremely deep. So lots of things to consider for the Steelers at wide receiver. I do expect them to sign somebody, maybe 2 guys of significance, because they need to do it, to be quite honest with you. They need 3 or 4 guys in that room that needs a revamping. But we'll see where things go at wide receiver. Those 3 guys, though, Tyson, Lemon, and Tate, really stick out in a big way.
I saw this past week Tyreek Hill's name getting a lot of mention as a possible Steelers free agency target. You kind of poo-pooed that in your social media, talking about his medical issues. Being a red flag that, especially for a veteran, maybe they overlook the medicals on rookies and draft prospects.
The whole Tyreek Hill thing is there's just a lot of red flags there. I mean, it's not just the medicals, because he's also under NFL investigation in a domestic violence probe. Like, he could be suspended 10 games. Like, we're talking about a guy that also had a catastrophic knee injury. It wasn't just a torn ACL. This isn't Stephon Diggs last year where they signed him and it was just like, okay, he's going to be ready. Guys, Tyreek Hill may not be ready ever this season. Like, it's very possible. He talked yesterday on one of his Twitch streams. He still has another surgery that he needs to undergo on his knee. Like, his timeline is extremely tight for the season, period. So I have lots of questions about him. I think he's going to be someone that signs late into the year. I think it's going to be like Asante Samuel Jr., where he'll take visits somewhere late in the year and sign somewhere. Like, I don't think he's going to be signed in the free agency period.
All right, there you have it, fans. That's why we have Nick here to set us straight and to scratch off unrealistic possibilities for your Steelers. So when they do address the wide receiver in free agency, who are the names that would make sense for the Steelers and still leave open the possibility of going high for a receiver in the draft as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think they need to sign a pretty significant name. Now, if they wanted to make two signings that were minor, I think the obvious two names would be one, Calvin Austin, I think is a natural fit. He just is a guy that knows the locker room. He's well respected. I think he fits McCarthy's scheme as a wide receiver 4 type. There's also a guy with connections to McCarthy, Jalen Tolbert from Dallas, a guy that put up, I believe, 800 yards with McCarthy one year. There, he's a bigger bodied outside guy. I could totally see them making those two signings as more minor moves. I think that, though, they need legitimately 4 good, maybe 5 good wide receivers. You run so much 11 personnel in the McCarthy scheme. You really need a difference of kind of abilities, too. It can't be the same guy. You can't have, just speed. You can't just have big physical contested guys. You need a little bit of all of it. You need different skill sets. To me, the one guy that I really would pursue is Romeo Doubs from Green Bay. I think he's as good as gone. From what was reported by The Athletic today, that he's as good as gone from Green Bay, so he's likely to hit free agency and probably get a good payday. I think he fits everything you want. He fits in the kind of mold where McCarthy said, hey, they need to be able to play every single position. He can do that. He's a good route runner despite being big. He's a good blocker. He's a guy that fits into a lot of different archetypes that they don't have. I think he fits that mold really well. I think Jawan Jennings is a really fun big slot option if they want a physical type of guy in there. The kind of jewel, I guess, is Alec Pierce. He's the guy that's probably going to get paid a lot. I just wouldn't drop 25 million. I think that's around where he's going to get. I don't see that as a very wise investment with the Steelers right now. But they need someone different from DK Metcalf. They don't need the same type of archetype as DK. And I think Doubs and Jennings both really well, to be quite honest with you. So that's the type of player you can really look and sign. I think they should sign 2 guys potentially in free agency. They have cap to burn. They have money to spend. Pour resources into this position because you have to, and I mean have to, this offseason, fix your wide receiver room. You just cannot do what you did the last 2 years because this offense emphasizes it even more than the Arthur Smith offense. And if you don't have the wide receivers, a lot of these concepts aren't going to work.
No, I believe Omar Khan, in front of the hometown crowd for this draft, would be risking life and limb if he does not take care of this wide receiver room for the 2026 Steelers under Mike McCarthy. Speaking of his counterpart, Andy Weidl, what a difference he has made since coming over from the Eagles to the Steelers, because previously we had those seemingly wasted first-round picks on Najee Harris and then Kenny Pickett. But under Weidl, we are spending high draft picks on the trenches. That has been the trend. The trend is in the trenches with Weidl. But, given the spotlight in the Steel City with this draft, alignment isn't like the sexy pick. Do you think that there is, aside from the Omar Khan pressure about the wide receiver, is there added pressure to make one of those picks that erupts this crowd, this live crowd on hand outside Acrisure Stadium?
There shouldn't be. I mean, no offense to the crowd in Pittsburgh. Who cares? Pick the best player.
They'll be drunk anyway, right?
You got to pick the best football player. If you think the best player is another defensive lineman, if you think it's a guard, if you think it's a left tackle, as you said, not the sexy pick, but maybe it's the right pick. I talked about Vega Ione being a guy earlier today from Penn State. I mean, we're talking about a plug-and-play left guard. He's a top 15 player in this class. If he falls to 21, I mean – I'd take him over Denzel Boston or Casey Concepcion. He's a just plug-and-play guy. You're going to have him for a decade. I mean, I think of a guy like him with Frazier and Mason McCormick, and you're like, the line is set. You know what I mean? All you need to figure out is left tackle at that point. That's the type of guy you can look at. So, no, I don't think it has to be the sexy pick. It doesn't have to be a wide receiver. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a controversial pick either. It doesn't have to be Ty Simpson. It could be a corner. Like, is a corner a flashy pick? I don't really think people are going to call corner flashy, given what they have kind of done at corner over the past few years, but it might be needed. There's a few guys in there like Avion Terrell that could really make a lot of sense. He's the brother of AJ Terrell, and he's a really good player. There are lots of positions they can go, and free agency is going to depend upon this. They have $44 million in cap space before they even make a move. We're talking about no cuts, no restructures, nothing. They have so much potential room. I think that in terms of restructures and cuts, they could create over 100 million cap. Now, they're not going to do all of that, but they have so much room they can make. I mean, you think about guys that they could probably cut, like John Smith, and that's, $7 million in free cap. Like, it's significant, some of the moves that they can make to free up cap space. So they have a lot of room to still make room. And so I think that's also something to keep an eye on. So are they going to sign Isaac Seumalo back? In that case, maybe left guard becomes less of a need, right? Are they going to just blitz the heck out of wide receiver? I mean, if you get Romeo Doubs and that, it becomes a lesser need, right? It does, because Romeo Doubs is a wide receiver too, a legit one. You can still argue you need one, but it becomes lesser. If they make a big splash somewhere else at like corner, it becomes less of a need. But right now we're sitting here, and I think right now, John, I can argue guard, wide receiver, I can argue D-line, I can argue safety, I can argue corner. All 5 of those positions, if you told me that you think the Steelers should pick any of those, that's not a bad idea in some regards. And so all those are needs, but they're obviously going to fill some of those before the draft. So let's see where things go there. But they don't need to make a sexy pick just because they're in front of the home crowd.
No, I totally agree with you. And I before there's a couple good comments in the comments. Keep them coming. Before we go to those, I do want to ask you just about the price you pay. Okay, we're sitting at 21. We have 12 picks, going from 21 to maybe 13 to get one of those top 3 elite wide receivers. The cost of that versus standing pat, taking the best available at 21, given all of the list of roster needs you just enumerated, and then moving up for one of those second tier guys in maybe the top of the second round. What's the difference in the number of picks you have to part with for a move? Those 2 options.
Yeah. I mean, if you had to trade up to say 13 through 15, that's not going to cost you your first round pick next year, which is really the key for the Steelers. They cannot get rid of their first round pick. They really can't get rid of any of their 2027 picks. They need it, because anytime you're in quarterback uncertainty, man, draft capital means so much more. Wow. Now we know this year the quarterback rooms that are kind of coming out, it's not great, right? Like, the quarterback class looks pretty poor. So you don't really have to worry about that this year. And that is going to come into retrospect, because the Steelers are slated to have 7 picks in the first 4 rounds. They're going to get a compensatory pick for Dan Moore Jr. That'll be a 3rd. They're going to get a compensatory pick for Justin Fields. That'll be a 4th. So they are going to have, 7 picks in the top 150 at least. It's 5 in the top 100 probably. Last I saw, the projection for the Dan Moore pick was number 99. That is a significant pick. If you trade your first plus one of the 3s plus another day 2 pick, or 1 or 2 day 2 pick, day 3 picks, like, that probably gets you up. Like, it is. If there's a team that really wants to get out of there that bad, that's probably what it costs you. It's not going to cost you a first round pick. It's not going to cost you even a second round pick, probably. Especially if you're going to like 15. That's a pretty small jump. That's not a significant one. So you're not going to spend a ton of bank of draft capital just moving up for that guy. And they're not going to make 12 picks. I don't see it. They're going to trade some of those. They're going to trade out. They're going to maybe trade up. They're going to maybe go get a player or 2 this offseason. Would not surprise me if some of that draft capital is gone before draft day. I certainly think that they could be in the trade market for guys. I think that's certainly an avenue far more open to them this year, with more draft picks that they can comfortably go and wheel and deal in some of these. So we'll see where they go. But trading up 6-7 spots, I mean, they're not trading up 7 spots because Baltimore's at 14. But if they trade, say, ahead of Baltimore, if they want to get up there because they don't want Jordan Tyson to become a Raven, and they really like Jordan Tyson.
Oh.
They want to get up there. I mean, they're not going to have to blow up their entire draft to do it. I think that's why there's a lot of appeal there to that, and why rightfully so. I think the Steelers should at least be interested in that potential.
I totally agree. And when you mentioned the Baltimore pick sitting at 14, certainly 13 is where I believe the Steelers will be targeting if they want to go get one of those elite pass catchers. And if they do, one of them descends to that range, that would be beautiful. That would ignite the crowd. Going ahead of Baltimore to get a receiver, that would ignite the crowd. From the comments, and you talked about trades, possible trades, and you talked about the quarterback situation. Is there any sense for the Steelers to check in with Houston on C.J. Stroud, who didn't really look that great all season long and then kind of collapsed in the playoffs?
I mean, yeah, you check in on him, but I don't think C.J. Stroud's available. I haven't heard his name pop around. Now, I guess it could be something that ends up happening, but I would certainly not expect C.J. Stroud to be someone that's readily available. If he is, sure, you go after him. He's a young quarterback with high draft pedigree. But I would imagine if that trade is going to happen, I mean, I know C.J. Stroud stock's at an all-time low. I still think Houston would want a pretty significant pick for that. So we'd have to see there if that became a real thing. My guess is it's not, though, right now.
I know, the smart money is on Rodgers coming back, but what other moves do you foresee at quarterback, either bringing in somebody in free agency or possibly what they might do in the draft with all of those picks in the first 150?
I mean, I do think that there is they have to do all their homework on Ty Simpson as they can. I know he has durability concerns, but they have to figure out what happened between the first 6 games and his last and the final stretch. They have to figure out the injuries, how much of those are risks. I know he has a back issue. He cracked his rib against Indiana. Apparently was dealing with a leg issue on top of that. They got to figure that out. How much of that do they think was surrounding? So that's the first order of business. If you like Ty Simpson enough in the first round, I mean, you're going to take him. It really is that simple. I personally don't, but that is something that they have to do. What I would imagine that they actually do is if, let's say, Rodgers doesn't come back, I think Malik Willis becomes target 1. I think that naturally makes sense. But he's going to get, I mean, he might get north of $30 million and all of 6 starts in his career. I understand there's a lot of intrigue around him, but he's going to be a very wanted quarterback. Cleveland, Arizona, Miami, more, New York may be in there. There's going to be a lot of teams that want Malik Willis. So the Steelers, they have to be in those sweepstakes if it's not Aaron Rodgers, but I'm not certain they're going to win those. Feels very much like if that were to happen, a Justin Fields part 2, where, they're intrigued by him, but they only want him at their price. And my guess is Malik Willis is going to get paid by some desperate team at quarterback a lot of money. So if it's not Aaron Rodgers, I think you kind of turn to the next tier, which would be, Kirk Cousins, someone in that tier. Daniel Jones, I think, is going to go back to Indianapolis. I think you would scour the trade market. Would you at least explore Kyler Murray? Maybe. I don't think he fits a lot of what Mike McCarthy likes. At least in his history, he hasn't. He would be a total precedent breaker for him. But to me, it would probably be, like a Kirk Cousins type, a 1-year guy that they just plug in there and play. I don't really foresee a scenario where it's Mason Rudolph and Will Howard at the top of the depth chart. I'll say that. So, I mean, that to me, the likeliest option is, let's say Rodgers is back. I think that they will do all the work they possibly can on this quarterback class. Do they like Ty Simpson? Do they like a day 3 option? I mean, even beyond, once you get past Ty Simpson, it's pretty bare, John. Like, there's not a lot of intrigue there. There's going to be guys like Cole Payton that I think are going to pick up some steam. I think some people will talk themselves into Garrett Nussmeier. Drew Aller's going to come up a lot for the Penn State connections. But, I mean, there's not even a lot of intrigue in those names to me. So, will they draft somebody? Probably. I think it's smart if you have 12 picks to throw a dart at one of the quarterbacks. I don't really expect them to do it. Like, I mean, Will Howard, to me, you name me Nussmeier, Peyton, Aller. I haven't put a grade on those guys yet in terms of prospects. Just watching them, I preferred Will Howard's tape to them, probably, to be quite honest with you, coming out of Ohio State. So there's a lot of things you have to do there too. The quarterback situation right now it's really the worst of both worlds in a lot of ways. There's just not a lot of options for them.
I totally agree, and certainly there's a lot of people in the 412 area code that want to see want to see Howard and see what they have there with this 6th round pick. And you mentioned Malik Willis and the cash in, and everybody's cap is up because the NFL's making so much money. They raised everybody cap. So he's going to cash in. But remember, guys, in that Pickett draft, when we took Pickett at 20 in the 1st round, Malik Willis was an afterthought in the 3rd round to the Titans. And now he seems to have been the much better talent in that draft that the Steelers just totally whiffed on. And we talked about the trenches, and you talked about the solidifying offensive line that's on the cusp of being really, really good, except for that left tackle position. And that goes to 1st rounder Broderick Jones. What's the status? When did they have to decide on his 5th round option? Was that a whiff? Because that would fall under Andy Weidel. That was one of the picks after he came in. So, I mean, where do we stand on him and that offensive line that's getting close? It's really getting close.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure he's guaranteed to start next year. I think Dylan Cook did enough to certainly make that a battle. To be quite honest with you, I thought Dylan Cook was better. Let's just put it out in black and white terms. I thought Dylan Cook was better. He's certainly more polished and pass pro. I think you can definitely argue that there's positives to what Broderick Jones does in the run game. He is a big boy, and he gets out in space really well, and he can move bodies. There's no doubt about that. As a run blocker, I think what Broderick brings to the table is definitely impactful. But the pass blocking, man, the technique that is still the same that it was in Georgia, dropping his head, the punch timing with his footwork, it's all off. He's consistently late, and that opens his chest up, so he gets beat by power at times. He's wide in some of his punches. The hand usage is all over the place. And so there's a lot there with Broderick Jones to me that is still fire alarming off. He was better this year, certainly, than he was the first 2 years. But I don't know. I don't know if they pick up his 5th-year option. I just don't know. Plus the neck injury. I mean, that's the other thing, right? How bad is this neck injury? I don't know for certain, but the Steelers have to figure that out. So all of that comes into the equation for this. Dylan Cook, though, I mean, is going to have a real chance to win this left tackle job, I think. And that's not saying Dylan Cook's necessarily the answer at left tackle, because we don't know. Short sample size. It was against a lot of really good edge rushers like Myles Garrett and Aiden Hutchinson and Daniel Hunter and Will Anderson. But also, he got a lot of help, right? A lot of chips, a lot of different reduced sets, things like that. So we'll see. But right now, Broderick, I think, is really in limbo in terms of his future here in Pittsburgh. And so we'll see where the neck injury is, but I'm not sure he's a guaranteed starter next year, which, yeah, I mean, if he's only the swing tackle, I mean, that kind of does put you in the bust range because they traded up for him. I mean,
right.
That certainly would put him in there. Now, maybe they find their answer at left tackle anyways in Dylan Cook. It's fine, but I don't think that Broderick Jones pick is aging very well.
No, unfortunately, you're right. And I almost forgot about that neck injury. That is definitely a wild card issue with him. This time of year, you get a lot of talking heads on ESPN just filling airtime. There's one thing that I saw that got a little eyebrow raise from the Steelers social media, talking about Nick Herbig. Everybody wants to trade Nick Herbig. Is there any universe where Nick Herbig is traded for Tanner McGee, the backup quarterback for the Eagles? I mean, does any of that make sense? And does Tanner McGee just forget about the trade itself? Does he solve any quarterback issues as a starter? I don't.
So, yeah, Bill Barnwell proposed this, and it's the write-up of it. So he changed his proposal from Nick Herbig for Tanner McKee to, I think, a 3rd-round pick this year and a conditional 3rd next year for Tanner McKee. And in the explanation says, you can't trust Will Howard because he's a 6th-round pick. You know who else was a 6th-round pick? Tanner McKee. It's just like there's gaps in logic there. Like, listen, Tanner McKee looked great in the preseason. We've seen lots of quarterbacks look good in the preseason. Kenny Pickett looked good in the preseason. Skylar Thompson had a dynamite preseason in August. Remember that? He was awesome.
Yeah.
You don't base things off preseason tape. You just don't. And McKee in limited time has had like intriguing things, but I'm not giving up significant assets for Tanner McKee. To be quite honest with you, if you're gonna give up an asset for a guy you're trading for that you're like, maybe he could be the next Darnold, it would probably be Mac Jones. Like, that's the guy you would trade something for, but not Nick Herbig. And there's this weird want to want to just ship Nick Herbig off for anything. I mean, why? I don't understand it. The Steelers have enough cap space to pay him. Like, there is when you don't have a quarterback, when you don't have this franchise quarterback, John, what you are afforded to do is you can splurge at other positions. The Steelers can splurge at edge rusher, and that's totally fine. If you sign Nick Herbig for a significant amount of money, do it. Alex Highsmith's contract's is going to run out sooner rather than maybe people think. It's also movable, by the way, if they really wanted to do that. I don't necessarily think they should. But like, there's this weird want to from people to trade Nick Herbig. I think it would be a colossal mistake to do that, but I don't know what in the world the Tanner McKee thing was all about. Really kind of crazy to me, to be quite honest with you.
I agree 100%. I'm not trading Herbig for anyone, and but Nick, you're bolstering the hopes of Steeler fans. You're talking about a team that's often derided as cheap, getting ready to splurge. I love it because they are loaded with cash in that salary cap, and they are loaded with draft picks, and they are about to approach this 2026 season, evaluating the talent at the combine. Nick will be there talking to the prospects, talking to Omar Khan, talking to the agents. So look for our big show, either Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, depending on the combine schedule. And then Nick will be posting additional breakdown updates as the combine proceeds. And all that talent is out there in their underwear, showing what they got. So it's going to be interesting. And the road to the 2026 team starts now. Until then, be back here next week for the all-inclusive combine coverage. Until then, go Steelers.